Thank you.
All right. I don't know if that have fun with it got caught there, but hello, welcome to the fourth and final of our Halloween extravaganza for Tutorial Tuesdays. Joe here from Copyhackers. I am joined by Sandra Beatty. Am I saying that right? Beatty.
Yes.
I
Yeah.
figured as much, right? But now that we're live, of course, now I ask. It's awesome to have you here wrapping up these tutorials for us. This one is on scary scope creep. So for any freelancer, freelance copywriter, particularly who has struggled with the project they quoted on, turn it into something else as you go. You're going to love this today. Make sure to subscribe to our channel to get all of these tutorials live and be sure to ask questions in the comments area. Sandra, this is going to be fun. You got some stuff to share with us and
I do.
stories to tell. So I'm going to let you take it away.
Okay. Sounds good. So I'm going to start by sharing my screen. So we're going to try this. I'm going to go into presenter mode in a moment here. Let's see. There we go. Okay. So we're going to go through a few things here for scope creep. And one of them is we're actually going to define what it is, make sure we're all on the same page. And we're going to talk about what I call the first and second line of defense for scope creep. And then we're going to get into some of the legal, not too legal, but legal stuff you might want to consider putting into your proposals. And something that I do, a welcome package, where I really like to lay the foundation about understanding what the scope of the project is and reiterating it over and over before I actually start doing any work on any project. And then we're going to just briefly touch on the project management tools that are available and how they can be really helpful to contain scope creep. And then how to handle the tough conversations, because we know that no matter how much work and foundation, you're laying the foundation that you put into trying to contain and manage scope creep, it comes up whether you want it to or not. And there might be some situations that you would consider allowing it to happen. So I'm going to just mention a few of those. So let's go into defining scope creep. So according to Wikipedia, scope creep is a continuous or uncontrolled growth in a project scope at any point after the project begins. So this can occur when the scope of a project is not properly defined, documented, or controlled. So in a nutshell, if we were just to say this plainly, we're saying that more deliverables are added that were not initially agreed on. Deadlines are changed where they're either being pushed out, so the project's taking longer, or they're being pulled in, and now you're having to rush. And there's no one policing this. There's no one questioning it or stopping it. And that is part of your job. Your job, whether you like it or not, as a freelancer, is you have to manage scope creep. So we're going to try and make this a little easier because it can be kind of uncomfortable sometimes. So first line of defense is like attract like. What I mean by that is if you are the kind of person who scope creeps, you are probably going to attract those kind of people. And I don't know why it works, but it seems to work that we hang out with, we attract the kind of people that have similar values or something to us. And so if you do not want to be scope creeped, don't be a creep and scope other people. So that's the first line of defense I think that anyone has, is just to be honorable in honoring scope. So second line of defense is to uphold your own business's contracts and policies. And this part's really, really important because it doesn't matter how much you have laid the foundation of trying to avoid and prevent scope creep altogether. If when it happens, you can't even stop it and uphold what and stay within the boundaries that you set, then we've got a problem. So one thing though that might help is if you can mentally separate yourself from the business in this way. So what I mean by that is In your mind, the business, not you, the business has contracts and policies, and your job is simply to uphold the business's contracts and policies. So if you can create that separation mentally, it might help you to do this part, especially if you're the kind of person, you're really nice, you have a hard time saying no, you're going to have to learn how to say no sometimes. So we're going to get into kind of some of the proposals, what I do in my proposals to kind of manage scope creep. So the first thing, and Joe says this all the time, always, always, always deliver your proposals live. Don't email them. So although it's great for being able to close sales if you deliver your emails, or not, if you deliver the proposals live, you set up a meeting for them, you're going to give it to them live. The other reason is because it's an opportunity for you to be able to go over the project and be very clear on the boundaries of that project while you're meeting with them. And it's an opportunity for them to ask questions. So always deliver them live. So I've given you here on the right side is an example of what I put in my own proposals, where I have listed out the web page for, in this case, it was web page deliverables. I've told them exactly what they are getting. I've included the cost, and I like to put my next available start date on it for a few reasons. It helps me to manage my own projects and my own time. It creates some urgency for them, especially if it only gives them like a couple weeks to make a decision or less sometimes. But it also lets them know that there's a pretty firm start date. And there's also, I give an estimated end date because I like a little bit of wiggle room at the end for unexpected things that can happen. But it gives them a really clear picture of there's a start date and there's an end date to this. So this project isn't going to go on indefinitely. Then I have terms and conditions in my proposal. And this actually sometimes can be longer than the deliverables and talking about the proposal at the beginning. I think my terms and conditions are 6 or 7 pages long. It's a lot of legal stuff in there. And I make sure to talk about, in the terms and conditions, I go over additional services. Like if there's any revisions, additions, or alterations to what we initially agreed on, then they need to understand it's going to be billed separately. They've got to sign off on it. We both have to agree on it. That if they need to supply something to me and they've supplied it to me, but it's in a format that isn't at a professional standard, and it requires me to then go back to them or do something with what they've given me to bring it up to a better standard, then they need to know that there could be a charge for that, because again, that is increasing the scope of my time when they don't deliver something that they in a professional standard. So the other one might be charging an hourly fee. In fact, you should charge it more if there's situations that come up where it's being delayed or it's being rushed on their end. So you can charge, in my contract, I say it's going to be an hourly fee if it's causing additional time for me to be able to work within some changes that have happened. And the other thing I put in is making sure I'm clear on how things like their responsibilities, their duties, and how they're being accountable is in the contract. So how I'm going to communicate with them, what the timelines are, any change requests, who am I speaking to? If there's going to be, if we've agreed we're talking to one person here, I'm talking to you, and then later on you bring in 4 more people, this changes the scope of the project now. So this needs to be really clear in your contract. And also regarding the fact that you're expecting them to proofread and approve the work. You're going to proofread, you're going to deliver, 100%, but sometimes it may happen and they need to know that the expectation is they're also going to proofread. So this is for any Canadian freelancers out there. There is a place I go to that has been super helpful to me, because as a starting off freelancer, you don't have thousands and thousands of dollars to pay a lawyer to write up contracts for you. So in Canada, there is it's called Online Legal Essentials that I use. I'm not giving you legal advice. I'm simply telling you what it is that I use to be able to get these templates and these contracts that I then use and can put into, for example, my proposal. So wherever you live, there might be an alternative to hiring a lawyer to do it specifically for you, where there's a lawyer that's created templates and they just sell those templates over and over again. I think it's actually a good business strategy that they've come up with. So you just purchase the right to use the template and you can use that. So just giving you, again, not legal advice. It's just something to consider to look at. Okay, so you want to reinforce the project scope. They have gotten the contract, you've got your terms and conditions, all that stuff's in, they signed off on it, and now we're about to start the project and you're at the onboarding stage. You haven't written a single word yet. This is something I use where I send them a welcome package and I specifically ask them to read it and note down any questions they have. And this is one of the things I put in my welcome package. And it includes 3 things pertaining to scope that I wanted to share. So one is a what to expect. So I explain the process and I explain their role as part of that process. So they are aware how we're going to work together. And again, if things are super clear at the very beginning, I think things move along a lot quicker and faster, and it makes it easier for you to stay within your timelines. So that's one thing. The other thing that I add is what I'm going to need from you. So if they get a heads up, they know I'm going to be asking for surveys. I'm going to be asking, can you introduce me to X amount of people so I can interview them and things like that. So they have a heads up in it. And again, it helps to keep the timelines, keep things going with your project. So you're not extending it and going outside project scope. And I also have my own business policies. You're seeing one page of it. It is 2 pages long. And I talk about things like if they aren't being responsive and or if they're taking a really long time to respond, I go over that because again, that's going to infringe on project scope. If we're having a meeting and they are going down rabbit holes, I have a code word and it's stray cat. And I tell them that at the very beginning so that they know if we're going off the railroad tracks here, I'm going to say stray cat. So we get back onto the point of the meeting. And this helps protect your time and their time too. So you can keep the project moving. I go about, okay, how am we going to handle accountability, reminding them of their invoicing and payment schedule. If they don't show up to meetings, how is that going to be handled? Are you going to charge for it? Are you not going to charge for it? And I have a specific section in there about about scope creep as well, which I will share with you in a moment. Then, don't expect them to read the welcome package, even though you've asked them to. Just default to the fact they probably haven't. And when you have your first onboard meeting with them, the first thing that I personally do is I go over those policies. So we are super clear. And I mean, I do it in the nicest way, but I want to be sure that we've got boundaries, man. We're staying within these things that we've set. So I like to have a slide with it as well so that they can read it. They're not only hearing me talk about it, they're seeing it again on the screen. So they kind of get a double whammy there. And then if you happen to have projects, I usually don't. I've had maybe a couple that were really big and a project management tool would have been good. But if you are working on larger projects, you could consider setting up and using things like Basecamp or Asana, because you can put your project deliverables right in there, your timelines go right in there, and that can really help to keep within the scope of the project. And if things do happen to go off, it's been recorded, and you can have the conversation about how you're going to handle any kind of project scope that does occur. Anyway, here we go. Next one. So you could have done everything possible to make sure that your project is staying within the boundaries you both agreed on, but sometimes things come up. So what do you do about that? First thing is, remember who you are. Your job is to uphold your own business's contracts and policies. So remember that. So if you're going to go off that at all, you need to think why you're doing that. If it happens during a meeting where they're putting you on the spot and you're like, this is what you can say. You need to give yourself time to think about it and respond later. So if you say something, let's put a pin on that, and we're going to circle back to it later. You've acknowledged their request, and you're saying, we're going to come back to that. So, and it's also giving you time to think about it. So that's a really easy way of being able to just handle those kinds of requests that come up or questions that come up, that just reply to it later and let them know you will. And then if it does happen in an email or some kind of written format where it gives you a lot more time to sit and think on it before you reply, you have the opportunity here to be a little more direct. So you can say, sure, I can do that. It's going to cost this much, and it will start after we've completed our current project. Do you want to move forward? So that's another way of responding if that's how you feel about it. So, but sometimes there could be situations that you allow project scope creep. And under what situations would you do that? So these are my own things, and you guys may come up with some other ones, but I think whatever it is, you need to be very clear under what conditions are you going to allow project scope creep. So for me, if I really like working with the client and I'm enjoying the work, and I know there's a really good chance I'm going to get repeat business from it, then I might allow it. If I'm looking for experience, like we're doing something that's kind of new and I really, really want the experience, I might allow it. Or if it's an opportunity for me to like build some authority on something, then I might allow it. But whatever you decide to do, make sure you're making that decision consciously as opposed to kind of being sucked into it where you're like taken off guard and you say sure because you don't know how to handle it. Just say, let me put a pin on that. I'll come back to you. And then you can consciously make that decision about whether or not you're going to allow the project scope. But just because you allow the project scope, you need to tell them we've gone out of project scope, regardless, especially if you're not going to charge them. Let them know this is outside of the scope of the project, but I recognize that. I'm letting you know, but I'm not going to charge you for it. You may even want to supply a reason why you're not going to charge them and you're going to do it for them. It kind of depends. You got to have to figure that out if you want to tell them why, but always tell them it's outside the project, the scope of the project. And regardless of whether you are charging them or not, always get the changes in writing. That is super important so that if you need to come back to something, I've had it happen before where a client said, I said something and I'm like, I don't remember saying that. So get it in writing if there's going to be any kind of changes to the project. I think that's it. So I just have questions up here now. I'm going to stop showing my screen. There we go.
So good. I was screenshotting it. So I hope a lot of people watch this and screenshot, screenshot, screenshot. There's so many good insights here. I love the welcome package. I love presenting the welcome package, understanding they won't read it. Some might, but many won't. And that's got nothing to do with anything except busyness. And that's what happens. Sandra, who hurt you? What happened in your life that you got so focused on making this happen so that you don't deal with scope creep in like unpleasant ways?
It wasn't something that happened in my own business. It was just working for other marketing agencies and being an employee and kind of going like having to deal with that in that context.
Yeah.
And I'm just kind of the person, I like boundaries. I like to kind of understand what's the framework we're working within and also knowing my own limitations. So yeah.
Okay.
It wasn't a specific
a lot though, right?
event in my life.
It's really thorough. Amazingly thorough. So incredible value for everybody watching. One question and then we'll wrap up. Have you had to actually use stray cat? Have you ever had to say it? Do you say it often?
I don't say it often
Okay.
because I'm also sensitive to some clients. You recognize they just need to talk something out a little bit.
Yeah.
And so I'm not like super straight cat, but I think I've had to use it once.
Okay.
And sometimes and the more comfortable I get with the client too, I will be like, oh, stray cat, we've kind of developed more of a relationship where it's, they get it. So, and they're comfortable with it. So
that's good. That's good.
yeah.
I've never had a code word. I've never had like, if I say this, we've gone too far.
Yeah.
kind of word. So that's cool. I hope you teach a lot of these. That was like super insightful. So well done. And where can people follow you? Are you on LinkedIn? Are you on Instagram? Where are you at?
I'm active on LinkedIn. So LinkedIn is the best. And it's just my name, Sandra Beatty.
Okay, fantastic.
Yeah.
Sharing things like this, hopefully, and many other great insights into copywriting, being a freelance copywriter, being an entrepreneur. Sandra, amazing. Thank you so much. That wraps up our Halloween extravaganza. 4 tutorials in a row. Amir just chatted over that Sandra is the best. So that's amazing. I'd agree. That was fantastic. Thanks, everybody. Be sure to subscribe to our channel to make sure you never miss any of our live tutorials.